Hello again. Bonjour, comment est? How are you? Today's episode is very special. Have you ever wondered how loss can lead to so many outcomes? When you lose something, when you lose someone, what do you do? How do you choose to move forward? This podcast can perhaps inspire you to choose what could potentially help you celebrate the memory of the loss and create value for the community. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome this conversation with Marc-Ansy Laguerre. Marc is a postdoctoral researcher at Rice University in the US. He is also the founder of Jenny 360 whilst teaching back in Haiti, where his whole story began. Take a seat and enjoy this conversation. Remember, just as a warning, the conversation in this episode may bring back some memories that are not happy. We truly hope you have the courage and strength to listen to Marc and take something from his story that can help you move forward. Marc, welcome to the Embrid Podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good, Daphne. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to share my journey and my work.
This is phenomenal. Now, let's say I am someone based somewhere in Asia and I am listening to this podcast. What would you want me to know about Marc?
Thank you, Daphne, for having me. I'm from Haiti. I am currently a postdoctoral researcher at Rice University, where I focus on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and uncertainty quantification applied to earthquake engineering. Before that, I was a student both in Haiti and the US. I started my undergraduate studies at the State University of Haiti. Then I was selected as a Fulbright scholar, which allowed me to earn my master's degree at the University of Pittsburgh. But after that, I moved to Rice University to do my PhD, and I focus on retrofitting vulnerable buildings to better withstand earthquakes. I am a researcher and engineer, and I also teach both in Haiti and in the US. And this gives me a broad range of experience in teaching, research, and engineering practice.
You must be clever if you got a scholarship to study in the US. That's one. And second, not only you have a bachelor's degree, right, in engineering, you have a master's, then you've just completed your your PhD as well, and now you're working as a researcher. How does it feel?
So I'm very proud. But
I
you,
like
you say
that.
you say clever and smart, but also, of course, as a student, you have to work hard and to have good grades. I had that both in my undergraduate studies in Haiti, but also in my graduate studies. Another important part was not only the motivation and focusing on the studies, but
Yeah.
there's the part of community engagement to have a
Yes.
type of commitment. Because I experienced the devastation of the earthquake in Haiti, I became very committed to the community. I wanted to make a difference. And that's why also I was selected for the Fulbright scholarship. That's an important part of it. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Your wife is brilliant, and you are equally brilliant, Marc. So,
Thank you. Thank you. The idea is that I value studying and learning.
mm,
So that's why I also believe in intelligence
mm.
is not fixed at birth. But I believe it can evolve if you can work hard in your studies. I believe that you will become more intelligent, more capable of doing good stuff.
Thanks, Marc. That was a very interesting introduction. And I hope now, based in Asia, I get an understanding of who Marc is. And by the way, people know that I'm not based in Asia, just to make sure that we give the listeners a flavor of our guest today. And I think they already understand where this conversation is going. especially around a topic that has caused major fatalities back in Haiti around 16 years ago. Now, it would be really interesting to know, Mark, before we explore more about the technical brilliance of your work, if you could tell us what early experience shaped your belief that engineering could be a force for empowerment and belonging.
Yeah. One of the experiences that shaped me was the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. So at that time, I was in my first year, and witnessing how building can be destroyed in a split second if they were not designed correctly. So that was a very big trauma, not only for me but for my family and many Haitians. So I was traumatized by the event, and I felt hopeless. I felt that I could not do anything for anybody because it was so devastating. And at that time, I did not know I was dealing with post traumatic stress disorder, and and I believe one of the mechanisms to cope with that was also to focus in my studies. I wanted to make a difference.
Yeah.
My belief that engineering can be a force of empowerment and belonging, that's how it came with this earthquake. It makes me think that as a person, you are part of a community, and that's how we can build differently. So that's why I think engineering is not only a technical study, but also there is a part of it that is involved the community.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing that. I was also in Haiti. I was in school, for instance, when the 2010 earthquake occurred in the country. That all made me think a lot about engineering as well. Although I was not as persistent as you were back then to pursue a degree in civil engineering. Back then it was difficult, so I don't know how I would be able to have a PhD in engineering. So Mark, kudos for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we're going to move on from personal history to purpose, right? Where we will explore your journey from Haiti to Fulbright, especially what motivated your commitment to earthquake resilience and community safety. Next question is, how did the 2010 earthquake shape your sense of purpose in engineering?
The day of the earthquake, I was in school, but I left uh maybe 2 hours before the quake happened, and I went home. Fortunately, my house did not collapse, so that's why I'm still alive. But the quake was still a decisive moment in my life. Because of what? I had my big brother, whose name was Vladimir, that was also a student at the State University of Haiti, and he was in class during the quake,
Yeah.
and he died during the events. And that's why I say I was very traumatized, and I feel that the built environment was very vulnerable. The life of people can be gone just in a minute. So I felt there's nothing I could do. And to deal with this bad feeling, a part of me tell me there's something I can do with that. So what I decided to do, I say, okay, maybe I should at that time, maybe I should dedicate my life to understanding why it happened and also contribute to make safer building in the country. So that's how my sense of purpose came for earthquake engineering. Yeah. To add to that also, it happened on January 12th, 2010. My brother was wounded. We hoped that he could survive what happened, but there was no hospital, no doctors, he couldn't get any type of assistance. So we were together in the yard of the hospital in Port-au-Prince. We were alone. That's why the following morning after the quake, on January 13th, so he died. So that make me think like Haiti is a system.
Yeah.
Because even if people get wounded in an earthquake in the US or in Europe,
Yeah.
maybe they could get more assistance with medical doctors and nurses because the system is functioning better than the system in Haiti. That's why I think to solve this problem of vulnerability to earthquake, it's not only about studying how we can build safer, but also it's important to come together as a community and to find all the actors that can play a role in making the country more resilient for that. In order to have resilience for natural disaster,
Yeah.
it's not a matter for only engineering. It's also it involves social scientists. It involves everyone. So that's why my purpose is not focusing only on earthquake engineering, but also to have a type of leadership on the community because I'm open to work not only um with civil engineers, but everyone in the engineering field, but also everyone that is involved in helping cope with this problem. Because also there is a mental health problem that comes with earthquake also. So for that we need professionals from uh, uh, psychology. So that's
Thanks for sharing, Mark. I know the earthquake was 16 years ago, but still, my condolences for losing your brother to such an unfortunate circumstance. Nobody would have actually needed to go through that, right? Had we had the correct infrastructure that day, who knows? The outcome could have been a lot different, right?
yeah. And also one part of it also was the communication system
Mm.
because the night of the quake, I was in Port-au-Prince for studying, but my family was not living in Port-au-Prince. They were in a different city, which is called Lekai, which is also at about 120 miles from. So to deal with that situation I had, I I, I had to call them by cell phone, but even that was not working properly. So it took me maybe 2 hours or 3 hours to finally contact them. And when they tried to leave the city to travel to Port-au-Prince with a car and to get my brother, normally this is a trip that can uh, the duration of the trip was typically 4 hours, but this day it was not 4 hours. It was maybe 12 hours. It took them a lot of time to finally reach me, Port-au-Prince. But at this time, my brother was already dead.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel now, 16 years later, looking back?
So that's let's say at the time I was let's say in my first year of undergraduate studies. So I was a very young guy. Uh, I didn't know how to deal with this stress. I learned by myself to be courageous
Hmm.
because with this type of situation, you can become someone that is very bitter and seeking for revenge and not happy. That's one direction you can go. But me,
Yeah.
I didn't choose that. I have love inside of me and I have compassion because I know that type of suffering. I want to do my best to avoid that to the future generations of Haitians. So that's why that's how I feel. I feel human. I feel very proud and also very happy that I'm contributing to something positive for the country.
Thanks for sharing that, Mark. There's a hard purpose. You doing your best. I always found purpose based on loss can be challenging. You would think when you lose something, you try to do your best to move forward. But when that thing becomes your purpose, sometimes it is inevitable you have to think about that loss because it is your purpose. I like the fact that you say you had to learn to be courageous because you need to be courageous to survive that, especially because your purpose ease your loss. And it's not an easy path. So I think just by listening to you sharing that story, I can sense your sense of courage. So that's very commendable and admirable at the same time, Mark. So thanks for that. Just quick recap for those who may not know. January the 12th, 2010, we had an enormous earthquake that caused many fatalities in Haiti. Based on the stats, around 50,000 people died in that earthquake. And unfortunately, all of those lives that were lost, they were all unfortunate. And today we have Mark with us. His brother was one of those who were lost. And just think about the earthquake. It's not only about an earthquake that happened, it's also about what happened next. Lack of communication, hospital couldn't work, transport system became chaotic in the country. And all these things together led to many more dead that wouldn't have occurred had the system strong enough to resist such an unfortunate circumstance. It's a very sensible topic, Mark. My family lost a dear friend as well during the earthquake. And I like the fact that you say you didn't choose to become bitter, because the story of my friend, for instance, she wasn't go naive. The day she went back to Port-au-Prince, that's the day the earthquake occurred. It was such a bizarre story, Mark. She didn't want to go that day. And she took a bus and she got out of the bus in the middle of the journey. She called her mother and said, I want to come back home. I don't know why. I feel like I don't need to go to Port-au-Prince. And obviously, she needed to go to university. Mom insisted, and she went. And that's the last time we ever saw Christine. They didn't even find her body. So
Yeah.
we've never had that closure as friend and family. Go ahead.
Many times people are thinking about this event in Haiti. They mostly focus on the economic losses, because it's true there were 100,000 buildings that collapsed, whole buildings that collapsed in Port-au-Prince. But beside the economic loss,
Yeah.
there is also the mental health problem that comes with that, because people are becoming very poor and frustrated. And also, I even heard that there is what they call alcohol problem, because a lot of people are drinking more to try
Yeah.
to deal with this stress.
Yeah.
So that's why I think to fully understand what happened, we shouldn't focus only on the economic part, but the trauma also
Yeah.
is also an important part. As you were saying with your friend, with a person that died and we cannot find the body, that's really hurtful, and that's
Yeah.
hurting for life.
Yeah. It is. It is hurting for life. So, yeah, when I was listening to you, it took me back to that time. And we did have psychologist Pascal on the podcast. We slightly touched on the earthquake. That earthquake was probably a turning point where our country should have focused more on our mental health as a nation to make sure that we recover properly. Listen, years later, we're talking about it. You can still feel that wave of sadness and trauma that hit you a little bit, right? You're trying to cope with it, but it is there lingering, right? Right. Okay. Now,
Yeah, that's why I think also what happened to me is that because the suffering is very hard and intense. I even imagine sometimes like I should carry with me a type of medicine if something happened, that
yeah.
I shouldn't suffer a lot before dying. So that's the consequence of the stress disorder. What I learned from that, to deal with this huge
Mm,
problem, compassion is, it's a good way of going, because I felt, okay, this is not me. This is about the human nature. It's about
yeah.
humanity. So
Yeah.
let me focus on something that can really reduce this type of situation forever.
I agree. Thanks, Mark. I agree. Compassion is always important.
I'm not saying it's easy. That's not easy, but it's a path to explore, to move from a situation that is very sad
Yeah.
to become happy again and
Yep.
motivated.
I agree. Thanks. Thanks, Mark. I agree. I hope this gives people more insight, a little bit of insight into what we went through as a nation. Obviously, Mark and Daphne, we're only two people out of more than 10 million people living in Haiti, right? but at least our stories would give you some sort of insight into what the country went through on that day and what we're still going through. That's something that's still lingering in some people's mind. Am I right thinking that's how Jenny 360 was created?
Yeah. So to continue with my story, so after studying civil engineering at the State University of Haiti, I had a scholarship to come to the United States to continue with a graduate study. When I was doing my master's degree in Pittsburgh, that's a different situation. I was already a little bit depressed with what happened during the quake, and now I'm in a different country where I was experiencing also cultural shock. That was very hard. So I said, okay, that's the moment now to start something and to contribute to help people understand how earthquake engineering works and what we can do with it. So that's why I started Jenny 360. I believe that good teaching methods can make a very big difference. That's why I focus on this platform to explain some very important concepts of earthquake engineering to see what it means. That's why if you look at my video in my YouTube channel, you can see I do a lot of theoretical work, but also I use the structural kit to have some type of visual experiment in the video to help people understand the meaning of the concepts. So I believe in that. I believe in this power. For me, that's a way of expressing engineering in a way that people can feel very compelling and
Yeah.
something like, okay, engineering is not really about doing abstract thing and smart thing, but also things that are really meaningful to society that can help people build safer. Because my videos tackle the problem many constructions have in Haiti. I try not only to say it, but also I have a demonstration where I can explain people and so now they can see by themselves. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's why maybe a lot of buildings collapsed in the 2010
Yeah.
earthquake. So I
Yeah.
believe when you know why it happens,
Yeah.
that's a big progress. You can no longer be traumatized at the same level because you know if you do something, it will get better. So yeah.
Great. That is very interesting. As I was listening to you, Mark, I could picture the Jenny 360 logo and I see why you chose that logo. It's a bridge, right?
In the
And then on
world.
top, in a world on top of a bridge, right? Interesting. And I like how you say you want people to understand why things happen. I can't remember if it was a physicist who said that, but it's like the moment you know why, the problem is more than 50% solved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about how you've made sure that what you are sharing is not only empowering, but also inclusive, which means regardless of where someone is in Haiti or in the world, the moment they speak the language that you are sharing that information, it would click.
I believe that intelligence is not fixed. It can evolve with consistent work and motivation. To maintain people and my students motivated, I have to make it look like you can do it. Not just the look. That's the truth.
Yeah.
You can really do it. But you have to feel that to be motivated.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not trying to make it look like it's very hard, they cannot do it, because that will destroy the motivation. I do it the opposite. I try to make it look like very easy.
Yeah.
And I believe also it's very easy. It's very easy. Once you have the good teaching tools, I had one of my students that told me once, coming to your class makes me become more confident. I felt very happy about that because that's one of my beliefs.
Yeah.
You need confidence in order to develop your intelligence. If you are in the wrong environment where people make you feel that, oh no, that's too complicated for you, not that smart,
Yeah.
that's not the truth, but if you believe it, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will make it happen. That's why in my class, I try to explain everything in a way that people feel compelling. That's my philosophy.
Thank you, Mark. That's really interesting. You make it about the listeners of your podcast and your student, not about yourself, because you put yourself in their shoes. That's very empathetic. And I believe, and I still believe that teaching is the most admirable job ever because you're building intelligence, right? So trying to explain something in ways that different types of intelligence would get it, you must be really clever and patient.
Yeah,
I
I
really
think
commend you.
also I think also the dimension of compassion is also
Yeah,
important
yeah,
because sometimes teachers, instructors,
yeah.
they want to feel like to be able to teach, I have to be intellectually better than everyone. I have to I have to feel superior in this knowledge. But of course, you have to be competent. You have to have the right background for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also important to
Mm,
not center what you're doing on
mm-hmm.
you because the people that are going to benefit from the teaching is not only you, it's also the students. So
Yeah,
it must focus on them because as part of developing intelligence, you have to believe in your capacity
yeah.
to become intelligent. If you don't
Agree.
believe in that, you will probably never develop any type of mastery or anything. So you have to believe in it.
I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. I agree. Thanks, Mark. I wish I was one of the students in your class because, wow, I was probably a lot exposed to traditional teaching where the teachers think they are Mr. or Mrs. Know-it-alls. It make you feel so small sometimes.
Yeah. I think in my situation, I'm not saying that's something positive,
Yeah.
but when you go to trauma, when you were traumatized by something that happened, and if you're able to build from that situation, you can have compassion. And with that compassion, you don't really feel when you cannot do something, you don't have to show that you're a type of God.
Yeah.
You're so smart. You're so efficient. You don't feel you have to do that when you have
Yeah.
compassion because you know you are just a normal human being. And
Yeah.
of
Agree.
course, part of that also, the purpose of teaching by
Yeah.
itself is not about making people feel good. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
But we use that as part of the process to make people develop their intelligence.
Yeah.
But after that, there is the dimension of you have to work hard.
Yeah.
You have to be serious. You need the motivation. If you're not motivated, you
Yeah.
cannot work hard. So that's why it has both
Yeah.
feelings and also the will to stay focused and work. In my case, I work hard as a student and also as a teacher. I spend a lot of time preparing, writing, and do everything. That's also important.
I agree. I agree. Thank you, Mark. It is interesting when you say it's not quite positive, but you've gone through that trauma yourself. You become a lot more compassionate to someone else who may be going through the same thing. So you become a lot more patient. How many things that we have in life, we've gone through it. And when we see someone struggling, we just give
Exactly.
them the moment, right? Just give the person a chance to prove that they can. Yes, we need to heal from that trauma. Like you say, sometimes that's the healing part of that trauma, being self compassionate and also compassionate toward other people. That's beautifully put. Thanks, Mark. I like that. Now, we're going to talk about resilience, which I believe you've already mentioned, through engineering. We'll talk about seismic retrofitting, data plus models, and real world application. I guess now you can imagine the question I'm going to ask you, Mark. What
Okay.
are the biggest misconceptions about engineering resilience, according to you?
I think for the built environment, some people sometimes think it's about having zero vulnerability. You
Mhm.
have to, you have at the beginning be strong to not
Mm,
have any type of damage during earthquake or during any type of natural disaster. But that's not a good way of saying it
yeah.
because what happened there is also a dimension of cost in building in construction.
Hmm.
You have to make construction very affordable to
Hmm.
people, especially in Haiti.
Yeah.
Haiti is not a very rich country, so we have to make construction affordable by the people. So for that, we could not expect to have no damage during an earthquake.
All right.
But the big thing is that we have to prevent building from collapsing. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Resilience is not about only how strong you are, but also how can you quickly come back to the level you were before the earthquake.
Yeah.
That's also a measure of resilience. It took Haiti a very long time to come back to the level it was in 2009 because of the earthquake. So
Yeah.
from that perspective, Haiti was not resilient.
Yeah.
But if we could make it in a way that if something happened today,
Yeah.
how quickly can we come back to the level we were yesterday? That's a good measure. We have to have that in mind because there is the dimension of cost that is also associated. We have to put everything together to be able to quickly get back on our feet after earthquake. Yeah.
You know what I like about this answer, Mark? While she's talking about engineering, it's also about people. Is it quite common in earthquake engineering whenever you are explaining how it works and how it should work, and you take it back to the people?
Yeah, with earthquake, the way I approach it,
Yeah.
especially, could sound very funny, but to me, when you go to trauma and
Yeah.
this type of path, what you really care about is not really construction. It's mostly people. But I know that in order to help the people to stay safer, I have to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
That's the compass I have, the people, not really the structure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's important in earthquake engineering. What I also felt when I was doing my specialization in this field, I can feel it in my classmates many times. One time I said that I felt that all the classmates are people that are really. I'm not saying that there are not exceptions, but there are people that really care about society, care about
Yeah.
the well-being of people.
People. Yeah. That's amazing the way you focus on people. I like the fact that you don't necessarily care about the construction. You care about the people. It's actually the impact that those buildings could have on people. So by making those buildings stronger and more resistant, you are protecting the people.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's always about the people, the community.
Not only about the people now, but also people in the future. Because the building cage older than 100 years.
Yeah.
I even heard about a structure in Italy, in Europe. The age of the building was 1,800 years. So you imagine that if this building is not safe, what could happen? The bad consequences of that wouldn't be the builder or the people that that live when it was built. Is the actual people.
The actual people.
When thinking about construction, it's not only now; it's also the future.
The future.
That's why it has to be not focusing only on the technical part, but it focuses on humanity.
I agree.
As human being, we want life to be better for everyone. Yeah.
Now, I think what you just explained beautifully about how earthquake engineering needs to be people centered. Communication plays a vital role in that. Now, I'd like to ask you, why do you think it is vital that technical knowledge is communicated clearly and inclusively?
Yeah, it's important to make good communication. Why? Because the bad communication can discourage some people,
Yeah.
and people can misunderstand the field.
Yeah.
For instance, if people think that the field of engineering is very hard, it's very difficult, what would happen if a person need to have a degree to afford a life?
Yeah.
They would not choose engineering. And to me, the communication that engineering is hard is not true. It's a matter of good communication. You have to communicate in a way that make people feel very confident.
Yeah.
So that's why I try my best. I'm not saying that I'm the best in this, but I try my best to communicate in a very calm way, inclusive way
Yeah.
to make people feel that they can do it because that's also the truth.
Yeah, sure. Now, I'm going to take us back again to the earthquake in 2010. And I think we talk about communication. Do you feel like communication wide, we were ready to face an earthquake in 2010?
We were not ready.
Why do you think so?
One of the big earthquake that happened before 2010 was, for instance, 1842 in
Oh,
Cape
yeah.
Haiti,
Incubation. Yeah, the
where
big one.
it was said that half of the population died. That was a trauma, but we forgot about it. If there was social media in 1842, we would still be aware of the earthquake risk before
Yeah.
the 2010 earthquake. But we had no idea that could happen.
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, the communication was not good.
Yeah.
We didn't know that the country was very earthquake prone.
Yeah.
We didn't know also how to respond to the quake.
Yeah.
I'm going back to my own situation. I had my brother that died during the event. So what happened? He was in school, and when the quake happened, he was not in the ground floor,
Yeah.
and he jumped outside the building. That's what happened. So maybe if he
Stayed.
inside, maybe he could have been alive now, but he didn't know what's the right behavior to have during
Yeah.
the earthquake. So he
Yeah.
jumped. And
Yeah.
because of that, he was wounded very severely and couldn't really
Yeah.
resist to this. There was no communication. That's what happened. But for now, even though that the country is not in a very idealistic situation where everything is perfect, but there is a better communication than before 2010.
Right. And I do agree with you. I don't think we've learned, and you did touch on that when you were talking about resilience. Resilience is about how strong you are, but also how quickly you can get back to your baseline, right? So that earthquake that occurred in Cape Haitian a while ago, we learned about it in classes because I believe there was like a famous Haitian author that died in that earthquake. I can't remember if it was a Valjo, or some of his family member. Then in 2010, I don't want to talk in a very absolute way, but like you said, I don't think we knew how to respond to an earthquake.
We didn't know.
For me, I was in school. We were all running around whilst the building was shaking. We were all trying to go downstairs, whereas what it should do is trying to find the most solid
Yeah.
structure you have in front of you, like a table or something, and then just get underneath that table, for instance, and then stay there until things come down. That's one way, right? We did have a lot of pupils' tables in class. Nobody wanted to stay under those tables. We really wanted to rush. Some of us even jumped. Do you believe if an earthquake occurred now, touch wood, I'm not hoping that should happen, but you say we are a very earthquake prone country and people need to be aware of that. Do you think more people would survive now? Because we have a clear idea of how to respond to an earthquake. And if not, based on your experience and your knowledge, what are the top 3 things people to do in the event of an earthquake,
Okay.
especially in Haiti?
Yes. I think if something happened now, we have to say that it depends because the earthquake has a certain magnitude and
Yeah.
also where the epicenter is. If it is in a densely populated area,
Mm-hmm.
that can make a difference
Yeah.
because in 2010 it was a magnitude of 7.0 or 7.1 that happened. The epicenter was in Leogan,
Mm-hmm.
a city that is very close to Port-au-Prince, the metropolitan area. So it was very densely populated. If the same earthquake happened in a rural area, we wouldn't have all of these casualties.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. But what I can say, if the same thing happened in Port-au-Prince, I hope that it wouldn't make the same devastation. Why? Because people are more aware of what of what earthquake is. They know like better how to behave. They
Yeah.
know also how to take care. I'm not saying it's general, but I hope they know like how to take care of people that are wounded, because sometimes people die not necessarily because of the earthquake itself.
Mm.
Because in my situation, my brother, I had somebody that for maybe 20 to 30 minutes was giving me some instruction how to take care of him when he was wounded. She was a nurse and she told me, do not give him water, even if he asked for water. But at that time, I had no idea of the importance of this type of instructions.
Oh.
So at first, I say, okay, no water.
Yeah.
But after maybe, let's say 2 hours or
Yeah.
3 hours, and my brother is asking for water,
Yeah.
and I say, okay, just give him water. I'm not a medical person,
Yeah. Yeah.
but after I learned that giving water can be a problem when people have internal bleeding.
Right. Okay.
So that's why um all of these things have to be learned by the people, how to respond
Yeah.
to quick, but also how to take care of people that are wounded. I believe now if something happened, we are more ready. I'm not saying we're ready, but we're more
Yeah.
ready than we were in 2010.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Thanks, Mara. I
Yeah,
know you mentioned
yeah,
one, two more. Yeah.
yeah. I think after giving people the proper help and assistance for taking care of their ones, it's important to think about strategy for the whole community.
Yeah.
Like, what should you do? What happened? Some people, the day of the quake, they didn't know how big the devastation was.
Yeah.
So they just stay at their house, maybe drinking beers or whatever.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't know. It's the day after, on the 13th,
Yeah.
we become like, that's what really happened. So if they knew it, they would have maybe go and help. I think maybe the cell phone company can help communicate with people. This is where we need help. We have X number of people in this area that will help a lot. The third thing is to have very qualified engineers and professionals
Yeah.
in construction to avoid that situation in the future.
Yeah. Agree. If I can summarize, the first one is about knowing how to take care of the wounded people, especially by listening to medical professionals. For instance, in your case, if they say not to give the wounded person water, please listen. It can be really hard though, watching someone wounded, especially your loved one, asking for water, and you feel in that moment so powerless. And at that time, you might feel that's the only thing I can do for them, which is giving them water, right? So I can understand it can be a very challenging decision, but you need to think about, the impact that kindness can have on the person. But in the second one, you did mention something really important, which
Communication.
is communication, strategizing around how to communicate the magnitude of what
Yes.
happened to people, because sometimes we don't know. And it's really interesting you mentioned that some people didn't even know the magnitude of the earthquake, they say at home. I remember the day after the earthquake, I went to school. Even though, it was a very traumatic event, like we were, running all around the day before. Next day, we went to school and the door was closed. And we're like, oh no, there's no school. Did you know what happened in Port-au-Prince? Many people died. So that's very important that we communicate that. And the
Yes.
third one, which is very important, it goes back to the resilience as well. Once that happened, make sure that we have qualified engineer to, one, get us back quickly to where we were before, and two, making sure that our buildings are more resilient for the future generations. Now, I only have two more questions for you, Mark. One is about, I would say, inclusive excellence in STEM. This is where we really explore like what leadership in technical field looks like when centered on service, like you say, people and inclusion.
Okay.
What advice do you have for young STEM leaders from underrepresented backgrounds?
Okay. I would encourage them to remain curious,
Hmm.
persistent. It's also important to connect with people in the field because I believe in the power of what they call cognitive intelligence, what you learn in school. You learn how to analyze with abstractions, but also there is the emotional intelligence. You have to know how to connect with people and deal with people because even if you have very good cognitive intelligence, it can still be a challenge for you to go in life and be successful because you have to have that type of social emotional intelligence. You have to think about it. Sometimes many engineering students are very introverted and very shy. Me also, I'm a very shy person, but with time I learned that I have to work on that. I have to connect with people. I have to communicate what I'm doing better. So I think that's a good way of going in life. But I think also it's important to have a mentor. Actually, not really a mentor, but several mentors. So people that can guide you and offer you advice in your career because not everyone should approach life the same way because you have your own personality, your own capability. So only a wise person that have already lived, know your situation, that can really advise you and say, okay, you should go in this direction. I remember when I was in my undergraduate studies in Haiti, there was an opportunity for me to go work somewhere. But one of my professors, he was a mentor for me, and I was very excited to go in this direction. And he told me, Mark, that's not good for you. That's not the right direction for you. So you have to wait for something else. And with time, I think he was right. He was right. So only with a wise person, a mentor, you can really identify the right direction to go. So that's one of my pieces of advice to the young engineering students. I think it's important to stay or to become a very kind and respectful person. Because even if you have the skills, people, if you're not a person that is respectful, kind, and that is really trying to make others' life better, maybe you will have a lot of barriers in your life. So that's why you have to learn to be nice, not weak, not looking for approval, but be nice with people, respectful. And because I think that's also a part of the professional success.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. That's very wise. I like how you balance competence with what you call social emotional intelligence. It's not only about technical knowledge, it's not only about working hard, getting motivated all the time. It's also about being kind, right? Toward yourself and toward one another, because that's what will help you grow within your community as well. One of the key things that you mentioned is having several mentors, and you did share your personal experience, right, in terms of when you wanted to do something, but you listened to the advice of someone that you believe was more wise than yourself at that time. And now you're looking back, you said, yeah, they were right. Had I chosen that path, probably you wouldn't have been the Mark that you are today, right?
Yes.
To be tall, you need to stand on the shoulder of someone taller than yourself. And I think that's what you meant when you say find civil mentors, because those people would give you the knowledge, they will share their wisdom with you, but also they can help you navigate so many situations, especially the ones that they've been through. Obviously, they let you make your own mistakes because that's how you also learn, right? But it's also about avoiding the avoidable. So, and that's what you have in my mentor, right? I know you are an engineer. We always say in the same circumstances, the same cause has the same consequences, right? Isn't it a law in physics or something?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Mark, I know we talked a little bit about mental health. Before I ask you the last question, which is a reflection prompt, you mentioned you're a postdoctoral researcher at Rice University. You're also teaching at back in Haiti. Plus, you have Jenny 360, where you also imparting your knowledge with your audience. So, when do you have time to go back to Mark and to go back to yourself and say, when do you have that time?
Yeah, that's hard. So sometimes it's hard because of work and staying busy. It's hard. But I do go back to Mark. So what I do, I play soccer. So I play soccer with friends every Saturday and every Wednesday. So I do it twice a week.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's good for me. And also what I do with family. So I have a daughter. So sometimes at home I play and I dance.
Can confirm.
I'm a very funny person also at home. I do play with my daughter when I can because sometimes it's very overwhelming, but I do that very often. Yeah. So
That's really good.
that's the way I come back to Mark. So it's like it's playing soccer and playing with my family. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. I know we've touched on a lot about your story in terms of how it all started, your loss, how you find your purpose, where your brother died, and you realize, okay, instead of getting frustrated and getting mad at everyone else, especially the Haitian government for not making sure that we had more resilient building, I am taking the responsibility to learn more about engineering, construction, and doing my bit. Hopefully, that will contribute to saving more lives and preventing someone else from having the same experience that you went through back in 2010. So that's a very powerful story. And really and truly, we do appreciate that works. And then you went on creating Genie 360, where you are sharing your knowledge, not only sharing the theoretical aspect of, engineering, but it's also about the practical aspect of engineering to bring it to life to people, to make them understand this is how it works. When we say, for instance, a building will collapse, those are the reason why that the building may collapse. And that goes back to, like we said, the logo of Genie 360, which I highly recommend people to go to on your YouTube channel and then watch some of your videos, which is a word on top of a bridge, which give us that sense of if the bridge collapse, the whole world will also collapse. Now, what is one lessons you wish you could share with every young person about the value of curiosity and perseverance?
Okay. Yeah, like I've been saying, uh I believe that intelligence can be developed. So once it's developed, you can do a lot of things. Because what happened many times in Haiti, for instance, if a person is not educated, if you don't have the basic education, it will be very hard for you to 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 afford a life. It's very hard. But once you have the basic skill needed to integrate society and the economy, now you can rely on yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why I think with perseverance and consistency, if a person is at school, it's a very big investment you're doing for yourself. So if you're learning something, believe that. Um, Believe that your intelligence can develop if you keep working on it. Never believe that that's not for me. Of course, it's good to have common sense. For instance, if you are choosing a field, you can say, okay, I had a better grade in this area, so I will go in this direction. That's good to do. But once you take the direction, don't don't give up on yourself. Don't get intimidated. For that, you have to remain consistent and you have to persevere in this direction. That's the value, I think. That's one of the greatest value in life, I think.
Yeah.
So you have to believe in yourself and believe in your capacity to develop your intelligence. Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much. It's been a phenomenal conversation with you today. I've learned a lot from yourself, especially how earthquake engineering is very people centered. It's not necessarily about the construction itself, it's about how to protect the people that we have now and the future generation. One of the key things that I can see it coming every time to every question is about compassion and also intelligence. Intelligence is not fixed, it can be developed throughout time. And it goes back to be patient, be compassionate toward yourself. You may not get it now, but if you persist, if you persevere throughout time, you will get it. Thank you again, Mark, for sharing your truth, your wisdom, and your vision with us today. Before we close, any last word?
So thank you very much for having me in your talk. It was a very nice conversation, and I enjoyed the opportunity to share my journey and my work. I really appreciate the space you are creating also with this podcast, discussing ideas about resilience, knowledge, and community. So it was truly a pleasure to be part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Mark. And it was an honor to have you today with me. And on behalf of the Embrace community, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know it's not an easy story to tell, but you've been very courageous to walk us through your story and where you are today. I'll say that your story embodies empowerment, belonging, resilience, and excellence, right? Which are the very pillars of Embrace. Now, to our audience, thank you for listening to this podcast today. I am Daphne, your host forever, and I have with me today Marc-Ansy Laguerre, who is a postdoctoral researcher at Rice University. He is also the founder of Genie 360, currently teaching earthquake engineering back in Haiti. So thank you for listening to this episode. And before we get back, please stay with grace, courage, and continue showing up with intention. Thank you, Mark. See you again.